I like to tell people that 90% of life is truly mindset, which is a choice. It really is how you choose to show up for yourself, how you choose to show up for others, how you choose to show up for your business. All of that is a choice, and you are 100% in control of that.
Successful people learn how to make their mind work for them. I'm David Nagel, and this is the Successful Mind Podcast.
Hey everybody, it's David Nagel. Welcome to the Successful Mind Podcast. Today, live in the studio, my guest is Tonya Dalton. She is a productivity expert, a writer, a speaker, and founder of Inkwell Press Productivity Company, a company centered around productivity tools and training. Now, Tonya's message about business management, productivity, and the pursuit of passion have impacted thousands and inspired her to launch her podcast, Productivity Paradox, which has surpassed more than 1 million downloads. Her podcast regularly ranks in the top 50 of all business management podcasts on Apple Podcasts. Tonya has been featured on Fast Company Inc., Entrepreneur, Real Simple, Elite Daily, Today.com, BuzzFeed, and among other places. She was recently named North Carolina's Female Entrepreneur to Watch by Ladders and released her first book, The Joy of Missing Out, in early October. Welcome back.
It's so good to be here.
Absolutely. You've been busy.
I have. Lots of things been going on, definitely, since we last chatted. Actually, the book was just named by Fortune magazine as one of the top 10 business books for 2019. So that has been a really exciting development since we last chatted.
Yeah, that is an accomplishment. That's an accomplishment. What's the feedback you've been getting on the book?
It's been amazing. I have to be honest. I feel like so many people have been saying it's like a permission slip. Like it's the permission slip they needed to feel like they didn't have to do everything. They didn't have to be busy. They didn't have to fill their days. And so I feel like it's been so well received, I think because this is the message people needed, right? But the thing is so often we hear these messages, but we don't have the action items. How do we actually make it happen in our own lives?
Right.
And so because the book is full of actionable strategies and tips, people are like, I'm already implementing it. I'm already starting to see the difference. I'm starting to find more JOMO in my life, which is amazing.
For people, because I could just hear them right now, the control freaks of the world, right? The joy of missing
I hear
out.
them,
like,
yeah.
That's got to be torture. Explain where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is there's so much joy in our lives, but because we're cramming our day full, we're filling our calendar, but we're not really filling our soul.
Well, that's
and I
true.
think that we are supposed to be busy. If we're not, filling every single minute, if we're not hustling and grinding and chasing the next deal or whatever it is, then we're not doing enough. And truly, if we pare down and we really focus on what is most important, we're going to make the bigger strides that we need to make.
Yeah.
We're actually going to get closer to our goals through these steady, smaller steps because they're really what's most important. We chase busy and we check 1,000 things off our to-do list and we go to bed at night and we think, gosh, I didn't get enough done. Or, you know what? Today I just needed to work harder. I didn't work hard enough. And we feel so unsuccessful, so unsatisfied, and just like we're not enough. And I think that this is the thing that we need. We need to go to bed and feel good. Let's go to bed at night and say, today was a good day. Today felt solid.
Yes.
I don't think we end nearly enough days doing that. And when you create that space, when you find that joy of missing out and you really revolve your day around what is most important, that's when we feel satisfied.
So let me ask you this. Was this like a process of coming to this realization, or was there like one specific thing, or was it like a straw that broke the camel back?
Yes.
What got you to the realization of this to be like, okay, I need to employ this in my life because this isn't working?
Well, I think like any big life lesson, you have to go through it first, right?
Right.
Like where you're just wearing yourself out. And so for me, I had a moment when my kids were really little. And I remember I was stirring a pot of spaghetti on the stove and I hear the garage door open. And I know that John has come home for the day. And so I hear the garage door open and he doesn't come in. And a minute passes, and 2 minutes pass, 3 minutes pass. And as each minute passes, I'm getting more and more irritated. I'm getting more and more frustrated that he's not coming in the door. Like, where is he? And so, I'm untangling the kids because they're hanging on my legs while I'm stirring this pot of spaghetti.
Right.
And I stomp over to the garage, and I fling the door open, and he's in the car laughing at some bit on the radio. And I was furious. I was so angry, and I literally said inside my head, how dare he take that time for himself? I would never. And I didn't even finish the sentence because I went, oh, I would never give myself 5 minutes to just enjoy a bit on the radio. I wouldn't give myself 5 seconds to transition from work to home.
Right.
Like, what is it inside of me that feels like if I'm not, filling my day, that I'm not doing enough? And for me, that was the moment where I really began to realize busy and productive are two very, very different things. We think that to be productive, we need to be doing 1,000 things, that we need to be busy. But if we're busy, we're just chasing our tails, and that's true whether it's, in our personal life or in business. We're spreading ourselves thin and wearing ourselves out versus being truly productive, doing what matters most.
Right. So you guys were having two completely different experiences in the same space.
Yes.
And would it be fair to say there was almost an assumption on your part that something was wrong versus that he was, is that why you got angry?
Yeah, I think it was just like, I can't believe that he would do this. You know what I mean? Like, I was so indignant and so angry. It's unreal to me how mad that made me that he gave himself that space. And that's when I realized why wouldn't I give myself that space? I used to give myself that space, but somehow I got these messages from society that I needed to be doing more, that you got to be doing more, you got to grind, you got to hustle, you got to move, you got to shake, you got to do all these things, you got to keep going. And really, if we need to do the work we really want to do, we need to inhale so that we can exhale.
Yeah.
And so often we're so busy chasing that we're not taking the in-breath at all. We're not giving ourselves that white space or that time to transition from work into home.
And it's doubled down for women. Like women get that message incredibly
without
more.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And then your self-value, your self-esteem gets wrapped up in the productivity
Completely.
or the lack of the productivity. So how did you start to apply this in your life? When you came to this realization, what did you then start doing with it?
That's a good question, because at first it was just like, what do I do? Like, because I felt so obligated to be busy. I think society really pressures us and pushes us to this idea of being busy is how we show our value. Right? I mean, how often do we say, how are you? And answer with the word busy? Because that's somehow elevating us. That's making us feel like we must be doing something important if my day is full. And so for me, it was really this idea of I had to step back and I really had to take the time to discover, what does that really look like for me? Why is it I feel this way? And so I really think this is a thing with productivity is it needs to be personalized and customized to you. A lot of people are like, oh, I've tried productivity hacks or tricks or systems and they just don't work for me. And I get it, they don't, because they expect us to have the system right here, and we're supposed to wrap our life around that. And that's so hard to do because you know what life is? Flexible. It can't be rigid. We can't play by other people's rules. We need to create a system that works for us. So I like to tell people, let's take your priorities, let's put that front and center, and then let's wrap that system around you. Let's play to your strengths, but more importantly, let's also play to your weaknesses. Let's make sure what's most important to you sits front and center every day, because that's when you'll feel good. That's when you're going to feel successful and satisfied at the end of your day. So for me, it was really stepping back and figuring out, first of all, what is most important to me? Right? What are the things I really, truly feel passionate about? What are the things that give me the fire in my belly and really drive me forward towards the life I want? And I think so often in the roles that we play and in, the pursuit of being the good mom or the good wife or the good boss or the good manager, we tell ourselves these stories of what we always have to do or what we should never do. Like a good mom never hires a babysitter so she can have alone time. Or a good boss never leaves work before their employees, right? We tell ourselves these stories, and they're so rigid and they're so hard to live by that we lose sight of what is truly most important to us. I think a lot of us enter this entrepreneurial journey because we want to have that life, right? We do it because we want to spend more time with our families or we want to be able to go on vacation. We want to set our own hours. And then somehow we end up working, 80, 90 hours a week, which is crazy because we're in pursuit of really this life we're looking for, but we've lost sight of it. So first I had to really uncover what is most important to me. Let's discover who I am. And let's then create a system that revolves around that.
So really reanalyzing your own value system.
Yeah.
What's interesting about what you're saying is that this is probably the first time in history when just regular people had an opportunity to do something other than work for somebody else.
Yes.
And to start to chart their own destiny. And it's much easier, I should say, as far as that, because of technology and what's available to us. And the fact that we can learn so much faster, also because of technology.
Right.
But nobody tells us when we start doing this that the value system that allowed us to survive, or whatever it is that we're doing prior to that, has got to change and morph based on what it is that we're doing. And I remember when I first started looking at values, just as like what our values, where they come from, and all of that, I noticed that there is a tremendous difference between working class, middle class, and then you look at entrepreneurial values.
Yes.
And it's like the opposite sides of the world.
Yeah,
it's so different.
It is.
So what other values go with this?
Well, I think really, truly, when you think about it, it's what is the good you want to put forth into the world? What is the impact you're truly trying to make? Because we go into business to solve a problem, right? No one goes into business just to go into business. We want to solve a problem for somebody else. And I think that's the first thing is, what is the problem I'm trying to solve, and what's the best way for me to really do that? I like to talk about our values. I talk about the idea of the North Star, which is your mission, your vision, and your core values. And that is really your guiding light. That's what lights your path up. That's what tells you, your mission statement tells you not what you do, but why you do what you do. Right? It tells you why you're really doing the work you're doing.
Sure.
Your vision statement tells you where you want to go. It's hard to know where you're going if you don't have a destination in mind, right? And then our core values tell us how we're going to get there. How are you going to make that journey from where you are today and solving that problem to really making that impact, that big vision that you have for yourself? And so I think really when you have those three parts together, that creates your North Star that guides and it filters. And it allows you to say, you know what? This doesn't really fit my North Star. This doesn't really fit where I want to go or how I want to get there. And when we use that as our guiding principle, it becomes so much easier to start sorting through that clutter and sorting through that noise and finding the joy of missing out. Really, I think that so often we think we have to do more, to be more, to have more. And really, if we focus in on less, we're able to make a greater impact in our lives and the lives of everyone around us and everyone that we touch.
If a person if they're in this situation, like where you were with the story with your husband, if they're experiencing that, how do they go about really looking at what values they have that make up these reactions that they're having in life? Because here's one of the questions that I get frequently from people. It's almost, and I should rephrase how I'm saying this. It's almost like this is the way that it is.
Yes.
Like my internal experience is the way that it is.
Yes.
And there's no bending. There's no compromise in that. It's that your experience, my experience, all needs to be the same experience because that's what my experience is. But it isn't. But it's not.
Yeah.
So
we each bring our own unique baggage to life, right?
Yes. So how do they find that?
Well, I think oftentimes, I really think reflection is such an important part of anything we do, whether it's goal setting or looking at your values, really looking backwards so we can move forward. And I think if we take the time to really reflect backwards and look at, what are the things that I'm telling myself? Like when I feel like I'm a terrible business owner, and really we'll say these things to ourselves, right? We have these horrible monologues that go on inside our brains where we say things that we would never say to people we didn't even like. We wouldn't say it, right? But we'll have these conversations where we're like, oh, I'm the worst, whatever, or I'm terrible at XYZ. Taking the time to stop when you recognize that story and you hear it in your head, to say, why do I think that's horrible? Why do I think it's terrible? Because so often these stories that we're telling ourselves are steeped in these absolutes, which are not bendable. And we feel like because they're so, they have this mythology-like quality to them that we can't change them, right? So if we look backwards and we start to see, okay, here's my pain points, here's the things I'm telling myself, let's dig into that. And this is the part that gets hard, is it's not going to be the first thing that you answer when you ask why. You got to ask why like 3, 4, 5 times to really get to the heart of why do you feel this way?
So you got to dig deep into it.
You have to dig deep. We're onions. Peel back those layers and really get to the heart of what it is that this story, comes from. And then let's figure out what that story is. And the beauty of these stories is you can rewrite them. We are the authors of our lives. Let's rewrite them and change the way these stories work for us. Let's change what we think are our values to what we really ideally want for our values. And I think that's really what I want people to understand is really everything in life. Productivity, the business you're creating, it all comes down to choices. We have the ability to choose what we do. We have the ability to choose how we're going to do it. We have the ability to choose where we're going in life. And we have to begin to realize that life is bendable. Life is malleable and flexible, and let's lean into that and change the things that we're telling ourselves.
So it's not just, because that's interesting, right? Like, I don't know that anybody really thinks about this. Here's this destination, but how am I going to get there?
Yes.
What is that journey actually, that experience going to be like for me?
That's exactly
and
right.
that I get to choose how that, to a certain degree, what that experience is actually like. I don't think people even think about that.
I don't think they do either. And that's the biggest part that we need. We need that action plan of how are you going to get there? It's like this whole idea of setting your intention. Setting intentions is great, but you got to have action behind them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're just dreams, right? They're just these goals that you're not ever going to accomplish. And what I think people forget is that it's not the giant steps. It's not these huge running leaps of faith. It's often the small, tiny steps, the itty-bitty steps we make on a daily basis that get us to that destination we really want to get to.
Could you give us some examples of that?
Yeah,
What are the itty-bitty steps?
Well, it can be as simple as, let's say that you have a goal for yourself to get healthy. The first itty-bitty, teeny-tiny step is, first of all, deciding that you're going to do it, and then calling and figuring out, where do I need to go work out, right?
Right.
So for me, we'll go back and we'll talk about how this worked for me. I knew I needed to get in shape. I knew I wanted to be healthier, and so I knew I wanted to do Pilates. But I kept telling myself this story about, I don't have time to do it. Listen, you have the time to do everything you want to do. You're just not prioritizing it. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, the same 168 hours in the week. You, Beyonce, everybody else has that same amount of time. We're just prioritizing it differently. So for me, I wanted to get healthy. I wanted to exercise. And so I couldn't seem to get myself to the gym. So I literally looked at my husband one day and I said, hey, I need you to call the gym and just make the first appointment for me with the personal trainer so I can go and get started. He did it. And once that appointment was made, it was so much easier. That momentum was there, right?
Right.
Once I was there, then it was like, okay, I'm going to book my next appointment. And I go the next time. And then I make the next appointment. And each time I'm there, I'm taking these itty-bitty tiny steps to move forward in that direction of being healthier, of having, for me, Pilates really helps my back because I have terrible back pain that is now so not even a part of my daily life like it used to be because I'm doing it on a regular basis, because I'm making the time. It's not about having the time, it's creating that time for yourself. And you do have that time if you prioritize it. So it's these little things, calling the gym, making the appointment, getting in there, doing the research.
Right.
Stop acting like Google's going to judge you on your searches. Yeah. Just ask the questions. You talked about the fact that we have more information in this day and age than ever before.
Yes.
And that is so true. There are YouTube videos, there's podcasts you can listen to, there's all kinds of thought leaders who offer up all kinds of information on Instagram stories and Facebook and everywhere else. There's no excuse for not learning. There's no excuse for not making those little tiny movements. Start by, gathering up some knowledge and then just do something small to make that first step.
What if... So I think I really like the way that you said that. What if, though, in doing that, it starts to ruffle the way the rest of the family has been running.
Yes.
How do we handle that?
Yeah, I like that question because I think this is the thing is, first of all, we assume it's going to ruffle other people's feathers. And a lot of times,
True.
hey, people are too busy looking at their own plate to look at your plate to see what it's full of, right?
Yep.
And so we make these assumptions and we tell ourselves, well, people are going to be upset by this. A lot of times they're not really going to be ruffled, especially if you open up the lines of communication. You know, I really think that communication and talking, bringing your family into the conversation is so incredibly powerful.
That's a good point.
I truly believe a lot of people think that, especially when it comes to their kids, like, oh, I can't do this because this is going to upset my kids and blah, blah, blah. I mean, they tell themselves they make excuses is essentially what it is. So even when my kids were really little, I mean, I started my first business with kids literally playing at my feet, right? Coloring, doing things like that. I would bring my children into the conversation. I would say things to them like, oh my gosh, you know what? I have all these papers that need to be stamped. Every one of these papers needs to be stamped, and I can't do it myself. You know, I wish I had someone to help me. And my kids would be like, oh, I'll help. And I'd say, okay, can you sit here and can you stamp all these papers? And they would stamp the pages, and I'd be like, oh, this is so helpful. I didn't need those pages to be stamped at all. I was just bringing them into the business, little tiny bit by tiny bit. And then it became, okay, well, let's talk about what mom does. Let's talk about what we do at work.
Yeah.
And so slowly, bit by bit, my kids are very much a part of my business. They're now no longer playing at my feet because my son is 6'2". So he's 16 years old and my daughter is 13. But they come into the office. They help build boxes when it's time for a launch. They help with different, Jack will research different YouTube videos that people talk about with the planners. And they're an active part of what I do because I brought them into the conversation. I've never, been worried that this is mom's world, this is dad's world, this is their world. It's let's bring them into the circle. Let's bring them into the conversation. And truly, that's how teams are built. I think our families are a team. We have teams at work. We have teams at home.
I agree 100%.
Bring them in, and when you allow them to be a part of the conversation, instead of talking to them, but with them and letting them feel like they're actively helping with the business, they understand when you have busy times. They understand when things are stressful because they're a part of the conversation, and they feel more a part of the team, right? No one feels part of the team if everybody else is running it and they're just sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah. Well, when we had this conversation before, and I think that it's important to bring it up again, when parents are business owners, or even with work, I mean, it doesn't matter. They're doing something with the majority of their day, and it's generally not spending it with the kids because at some point the kids have they have school, they have to start learning and doing that also. Do the kids actually see the parents enjoying what they do in life?
Yes,
And
I think that's so important.
Yeah, and when they're not doing this, right, when they have to be everywhere all the time, when they have to be in control of everything that's going on, and they're in that place of like, I'm angry because somebody else is doing something, they grow up with this idea that life is miserable.
Yes. We're role modeling for our children, right? We're role modeling for them what life can be like, what the possibilities are. And if we're coming home and we're grumbling every day, we're showing them that, you know what, life sucks as an adult, right?
Exactly.
Instead of being like, you know what, today was hard, but tomorrow's going to be better. This is what I'm working on. Really, truly bringing them in. And so what's interesting is there's the studies called the Whitehall studies that took place in Britain, where they found out, they were doing this study on different managers in businesses. And they thought that as they went up the corporate ladder, that their stress level would be higher and it would affect their families. What they found, though, it was really the mood that the parents came home in that affected the children the most.
And you said that was the Whitehall studies?
The Whitehall studies, yes. It's a fascinating study that took place in Britain, and it's really fascinating because it really, truly, brings light to that whole idea that it's all about attitude.
Yeah.
That if we come home and we're grumbling and complaining about work, that seeps into our lives at home, right? Which obviously affects our children and everything else. So our stress levels are things that we're choosing. It's not about where we are on the corporate ladder or how much money we're making or any of those things, the big decisions we're making. It's how we come home and how we present ourselves to our families.
Right.
So if you're truly doing something you love, if you're following your entrepreneurial journey because you're doing something you're passionate about, remember that. That's why we use that North Star to guide us.
For sure.
The mission statement is not what you do. It is why you do what you do.
Why you do what you do.
Why are you doing it? And we need to go back to that question of why again and again, because there's going to be days that are incredible and that are amazing, but there's going to be days that are not.
Yes.
I mean, we all have those days where we're like exhausted, worn out, stressed out, something didn't go right, a client, fired us or whatever happens. Get back to that why.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? What is the heart of what you're doing? Use that North Star to guide you and remind you this is why you're putting in those hours.
That's brilliant. 2 more questions. 1, where can people find your book?
Yes, so
and
you can.
More about you.
Yes, if you go to joyofmissingout.com, you can find links to all the places the book is sold. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, so pretty much anywhere you buy books.
Okay.
And you can also find me at tonyadalton.com, which is Tonya with an O and a Y. And that's kind of my hub for all things that I do, the podcast, the book, my products that I offer, my planners and productivity tools as well.
And we'll be sure to put it in the drop down also underneath this. But the last one is, if you could leave everybody with a successful mind tip, something that has made a difference in your life, it can be related to the book or not. It's entirely up to you. What is on your heart that you would share?
Yeah, I like to tell people that 90% of life is truly mindset, which is a choice. It really is how you choose to show up for yourself, how you choose to show up for others, how you choose to show up for your business. All of that is a choice, and you are 100% in control of that.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
My
It was
pleasure.
great.
Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to the Successful Mind podcast. And if you like what you heard and you want to know more, go to davidnagel.com/free stuff.